Hey guys, what's happening? It's Brent Axe here, live, a special Syracuse football, Syracuse sports pod live on a Sunday afternoon because Syracuse football has its bowl destination, sunny San Diego for the Orange, December 27th against Washington State in the Holiday Bowl, as noted in San Diego, December 27th, so just a couple days after Christmas in a warm location. It came down to the Gator Bowl, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, or the Holiday Bowl, and as it turns out, it is the Holiday Bowl for the Orange. So let's talk about it a bit here as Syracuse fans take this one in here. It's a busy time for Syracuse football that they were waiting for their bowl destination. They got it. The transfer portal opens up on Monday, December the 9th. We speak here on Sunday, December the 8th, and there's still some questions that surround this bowl game on the Syracuse end of things. There's some questions that surround this bowl game on the Washington State side of things, and we will, of course, get you ready for this bowl game over the next few weeks. Our Syracuse Sports Insiders had some reactions to this one. I'm sure you have some reactions to this one, kind of taking it all in, and we'd love to hear those reactions as a Syracuse Sports Insider. Speaking of which, shout out to Mark in San Diego, one of our regular contributors off our Syracuse Sports Insider text line. Mark, we're going to be leaning on you, buddy, to give us all the tips for those that want to make the trip to San Diego for the Holiday Bowl. Mark's going to give us the hookup on that, so our Syracuse Sports Insiders will get insider access on that. Your thoughts, opinions, questions, anything you want to know, anything you want to ask about Syracuse sports, that's what our Syracuse Sports Text Insider line is for. You can text me directly anytime. I send you guys texts as well, and it's just $3.99 a month for that exclusive insider access. You can try it free for 2 weeks. What a great holiday gift as we approach the Holiday Bowl. So, initial reactions. I think people are kind of bummed. I think a lot of Syracuse fans were honing in on the Gator Bowl. The Gator Bowl would have been an SEC opponent. There were some projections that Syracuse, there were some people out there thinking Syracuse was going to play Bama in the Gator Bowl, which would have been ideal, right? Even South Carolina in the Gator Bowl, which would have been the Lenora Sellers Bowl, of course, the former Syracuse commit who backed out right before signing day a couple of years ago, goes to South Carolina and has had a spectacular run as the starting quarterback there. Certainly will be in the early Heisman conversations for next season and has done an excellent job there. Had Kyle McCord chosen to play in this game, which we don't know at this point, by the way, right? We're still waiting to hear now from Kyle McCord, from LeQuint Allen, from Justin Barron, Marlowe Wax, Oronde Gadsden. I don't know at this point whether they're going to play. I don't have any inside information on that, any tips on that. I'm awaiting their decisions like the rest of us here. But what Kyle McCord did say on Friday was it depends on where Syracuse was going and what their bowl situation would be. Now, I had heard, depending on what the opponent was, what the situation was. And I'll say this. Washington State's defense is terrible, so I don't know if that helps Syracuse's cause to get Kyle McCord to play in this game. But look, San Diego, I went to San Diego for the first time about 4 or 5 months ago and absolutely loved it. If you've never been to San Diego, this is an amazing opportunity to see Syracuse football play there. It is close to Christmas, which is going to be tricky for some people. It's a busy travel time of the year, just a couple days after the holiday. But if you're looking for something to do that week, a lot of people are off that week. After Christmas there, San Diego is one of the greatest places on earth. I fell in love with it when I went there. It is absolutely incredible. And if you've never been, what a perfect opportunity to go, right? It's not bad. It's a warm weather location. This isn't Fenway Park or the Pinstripe Bowl or any of those fears that Syracuse fans had. But once SMU got in the playoff, Clemson beats SMU for the ACC championship, it looked like Syracuse was in line for one of those top-tier bowls, which some of you think the Holiday Bowl is. It actually has one of the higher payouts out there. It's a legacy bowl. So a lot of ways, it is a great bowl destination for Syracuse. I just think a lot of people felt Florida was the easier trip to make. It's certainly the cheaper trip to make. The flights to San Diego are not cheap. It's going to be a little expensive for some people, especially if you're coming from the East Coast, to go to San Diego. And that SEC opponent is a little sexier than Washington State, one of the remaining teams in what is the Pac-2, which will become the Pac 5 or 6 next year as they lost all those teams, including Cal and Stanford, who came into the ACC for this upcoming season. But Washington State, one of the few remaining teams in what is now one of 2 remaining teams in the Pac-2, with Boise State and a bunch of teams to come in next year. So I think that's a bit of a bummer for some because people were locking in on the Gator Bowl, but at the same time, San Diego, late December, not a bad second prize, if you will. You didn't win the Showcase Showdown, but you did get a copy of the home game and a year's supply of turtle wax kind of thing. Syracuse is in its 3rd straight bowl game. This is the first time, or actually, I take that back. It's the second time they're going to play Washington State ever. The first time they faced Washington State was in 1979 when Syracuse had to play at what was then called Rich Stadium, home of your Buffalo Bills, when they were constructing the Carrier Dome. So they have faced Washington State just once in the past. It was a 52-25 win by Syracuse. Joel Morris had a huge day for the Orange in that game. So a opponent they haven't faced before just once in the late 1970s there. So while we wonder if Kyle McCord is going to play for Syracuse and some of those other names that we mentioned, the big question for Washington State is if their quarterback is even going to be on the roster. John Mateer was one of the bust-out stars in college football this year. He had 3,139 yards, 29 touchdowns, same amount as Kyle McCord, just 7 picks on the year. He was also Washington State's leading rusher with 836 yards and 15 touchdowns. That 15 touchdowns ranked 12th in the country overall rushing touchdowns for any position. So this guy, breakout star at Washington State. Of course, though, the rumbles are out there that Mateer is going to enter the transfer portal. Now, there's some talk that Washington State is scrambling. They're trying to get some NIL money, trying to get him to stay. The tricky thing, though, for this situation is Ben Arbuckle, who was the offensive coordinator at Washington State this year. And Washington State finished 11th in the country offensively. They scored 36.8 points per game. Arbuckle took the Oklahoma offensive coordinator job earlier this week. So the strong speculation is that Ben Arbuckle is going to get John Mateer to follow him to Oklahoma. So it does not appear that you're going to see the quarterback matchup, at least from one standpoint. If Kyle McCord does choose to play, he is not going to be facing off with John Mateer. Of course, he had the huge showdown with Cam Ward at the end of the regular season. Doesn't look like we're going to get that unless Washington State can convince him to play. He did practice with Washington State on Friday. They were allowed to start practicing for, now they know their bowl opponent in Syracuse, but they've got into practice on Friday. John Mateer did practice with the team, and again, there is some discussion that maybe they can convince him to not go in the portal and get him to stay at Washington State. I mean, he'd get a huge payout at Oklahoma. I don't imagine Washington State has quite the resources to keep somebody on board versus what Oklahoma. Think of all those quarterbacks that have come out of Oklahoma, won the Heisman, gone on to the National Football League in recent years. That's going to be tough to compete with. And you got a coach that you're familiar with there and had a great season with. So that's the big question for Washington State. They're also coming in not only with a new offensive coordinator, but a new defensive coordinator. Washington State fired defensive coordinator Jeff Schmedding at the end of the season. So they played a schedule that ranked 111th in the country. They were 90th in scoring defense. They were 116th in yards allowed per game. They allowed 429 yards per game, 120th in the country allowed per rush. So if I'm LeQuint Allen and I'm seeing a defense that gives up 5 yards a carry, which ranked 120th in the country, maybe I'm thinking about playing one more game. If I'm Kyle McCord, maybe I can feed into those numbers, which already led the country in terms of passing yards. But these guys have decisions to make about the National Football League, McCord included. I don't anticipate we're going to see Oronde Gadsden play in this game one way or the other. That is one opt-out that I am expecting from this game. Whether you're Marlowe Wax or Justin Barron, 2 guys that are going to go through the NFL draft process as well, do you risk playing one more game? Do you get the band back together, if you will, get your guys out there one more time in San Diego just a couple days after Christmas? I think if it was the Gator Bowl against a SEC opponent, whether that was South Carolina or Bama or whoever they would have played, I think most of these guys would opt in San Diego 2 days after Christmas. Washington State, again, it's a pretty weak defense, so you're going out there and have a chance to put up some numbers here. And from an offensive standpoint, like we said, Mateer doesn't look like he's going to play in this game. They also lost a running back who had a pretty decent season this year. Let me pull up his name here while we're talking about it here. So let's see. Mateer might go in the portal. They also lost, there was a running back, Wayshawn Parker. Had 735 yards, 4 touchdowns, also had just over 100 yards receiving this year. He's announced he's entering the portal. Their head coach, Jake Dickert, says he expects to lose about 15 to 20 players into the portal, which opens on Monday. There are some players that have already announced their intention to enter the portal, but we're going to see a whole more flood of players officially in the portal when it opens on Monday, which is a question for Syracuse as well. If Fran Brown, and I know that the coaching staff was out there fishing this week and trying to lock down a visit or two from some quarterbacks. There's no question Syracuse is looking for a transfer portal quarterback to bridge the gap between Kyle McCord and whoever would take over, be it, you've got a couple of guys still on the roster. Michael Johnson Jr. has another year of eligibility. Jakari Williams is the favorite to kind of step in if they go with somebody on the roster. Luke Carney, freshman from Mesquite, Texas. Dallas Christian, who, by the way, just won his 4th straight state championship. He was the offensive and defensive MVP of that game. He's a multi-purpose threat, but he's probably not ready to take over the gig, right? They got Rich Bielen. His older brother is Henry Bielen from Brooklyn, freshman. He's not ready. It just feels like Syracuse is going to go in the portal and grab a quarterback. I've heard, there's a name to throw out there for you, Ricky Collins, LSU. Keep that name in mind. That is a name that I've heard Syracuse is interested in. Ryan Brown at Purdue is another name. Some Syracuse coaches are following him on social media, which can mean anything, right? But there's a few names that have popped out there that make sense for Syracuse, that you can link to Syracuse. So I don't think there's any question they're at least kind of kicking the tires on a transfer portal quarterback, right? So without McCord and looking at it from a Washington State standpoint, I mean, that's a sexy headline that the Holiday Bowl could write if it was John Mateer against Kyle McCord, but I don't think either one of those two is going to play in this game. I'd love to be pleasantly surprised that at the very least McCord's going to play from a Syracuse standpoint, but it doesn't appear Mateer is going to be in there. Now, in terms of some other things to know about Washington State, so their backup quarterback is, and I hope I'm saying this young man's name correctly, Zevi Eckhouse. He came in from Bryant. He was a transfer. He put up huge numbers at Bryant. He was actually nominated for the Jerry Rice Award, which is the FCS level version of the Heisman. He, he transferred there. He was the Big South Offensive Player of the Year, but he only threw 7 passes this year. So if that's who they go with the bowl game, a guy that has some experience, albeit at a level much below what you would expect at a Syracuse, Washington State type of thing, and with Mateer setting the standard there. Who would play for Syracuse if Kyle McCord doesn't go? That's a great question. Do you split reps between Michael Johnson Jr. and Jakari Williams? Because even if you dip into the portal for a quarterback, they're obviously not going to be ready to step in and play in the bowl game, right? I would anticipate they're going to split. By the way, even if Kyle McCord plays in Syracuse's bowl game, he is not playing in the entire game. I don't think there's any question about it. He'll play a half and then sit. Because if you are Fran Brown, you want to see what you got in Michael Johnson Jr. and Jakari Williams in a game situation, because Kyle McCord was the first Syracuse quarterback that went start to finish in a season since Ryan Nassib in 2012. Now, Eric Dungy started all 12 games in the 2018 season, but you got to remember, he came out of the Notre Dame game, right? So Kyle McCord was the first quarterback that started, played, and was not benched either due to injury or by performance. There's been some Syracuse quarterbacks in the last decade and change that have been benched by performance, right? That have been switched around. So you didn't get to see Michael Johnson Jr. or Jakari Williams in a game situation, right? So you got to see what you got there. on the roster in a game setting. So even if McCord chooses to play in the bowl game, which if I'm going to venture a guess, I'm going to say no, I could be wrong. I'd love to be wrong because I'd love to see him play one more time. He's not playing the whole game. Why would you, right? You play him a half, maybe competitive juices take over and you want to win the game and all that. But bowl games are also a bridge to the future. It's an opportunity to see those next players, those young guys, kind of step in. It's 15 more practices. This is the third straight bowl. For all the talk of coaching changes and everything we've talked about and Fran Brown refreshing the program, this is their third straight bowl game, which, we hadn't been used to in Syracuse with football. It'd been scattered, a bowl here, a bowl there, but 3 straight bowl games is something, but obviously a little more shine on this one. But again, some people not happy with this destination here at the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. Here's a little bit of what our Syracuse Sports Insiders had to say. We'll do that in a second here. I think we kind of covered everything you need to know initially with Washington State. We'll certainly get more into the matchup over the next days and weeks here, getting closer to the 27th here. But that's the big thing with them. John Mateer was their offense. He was their guy, and it appears he's going to be in the portal starting this week. So they'll be refreshing with a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator and in transition. They also lost their last 3 games of the year to bad teams. So Washington State started 8-1, then lost to New Mexico, Oregon State, and Wyoming. Faded down the stretch. New coordinators, don't have their quarterback, could have 15 to 20 players into the portal. They're in a state of transition. Not that Syracuse isn't, with some players that are moving on. Inevitably, there's going to be some players in the portal for Syracuse. Anwar Sparrow, linebacker for the Orange, backup linebacker who did play in all 12 games this year. He's the and there was one other player, too, who's escaping me off the top of my head. But there wasn't a ton of announcements last week. I think some players were waiting to see what the bowl game situation was and a couple other things before announcing their intentions to go in the portal. But we know there's going to be some, right? Given that Syracuse just brought in a recruiting class for 2025, which we talked about earlier this week, that is 34 players in it. By the way, speaking of that, in Syracuse last night, I mentioned Luke Carney won his 4th straight state championship. Darian Williams, incoming Syracuse commit from right here in Syracuse, Christian Brothers Academy. They faced Christian Brothers Academy of Albany in the state championship game in the Dome. If you haven't seen the highlights going around, check it out. Hail Mary, last play of the game. Williams catches the touchdown. I think it was the number 1 play on SportsCenter. An amazing play, an amazing game. And you got some Syracuse commits doing some big things out there, as you would imagine, right? But with 34 incoming players, the roster limit is expected to kick up to 105. The math ain't mathing here, right? Some players got to move. Like Fran Brown's going to have to have a conversation with some players about moving on from Syracuse, and some players that kind of see the writing on the wall here, because with all, if for some reason, and I don't think this is going to be the case, but if for some reason it sticks with 85 scholarships and you have 34 coming in just as freshmen in 2025, like 40% of your roster is freshmen. It's not going to work out, right? So there's definitely going to be some movement in the portal. Those are the big questions, though, for Syracuse. Who's playing in this game and who's going in the portal? They now know their bowl destination, which, again, is a bit of a bummer for some people. I want to hear from our Syracuse Sports Insiders here, including Rondell, says Washington State is 583, and 45 since the founding of their program in 1894. That's quite possibly the only team in FBS that has a literal 500 record. From Jack H., who says, man, absolutely shafted in the bowl game. Syracuse is one of only 3 Power 5 top 25 teams not playing in a top 25 team in their bowl game. So the Gator Bowl took Duke over Syracuse, which is interesting. I mean, Duke has had certainly better success as of late. They do have a passionate fan base that would love to go to Florida in January. But think of how many, not displaced, think how many of, including our guy Rockin' Ron's got to be bummed. Sorry, Ronnie. You would have had another great trip. Jacksonville, at the Boca Bowl last year for our guy Rockin' Ron in Florida. But Florida's a much easier trip, easier flights, direct flights from Syracuse and all points of the East Coast. Not that there aren't Syracuse fans all over the country, so the West Coast representation will have to show up Third trip out west for Syracuse this year, by the way. Of course, the trip to Vegas, went to Cal, and now they're going back to California to play in San Diego. So the West Coast reps will have to be out there, and some people are contemplating some last-minute Christmas gifts around the dinner table tonight, right? About a trip to San Diego for the Holiday Bowl. So I get it. Some people would rather have the Gator Bowl with a bigger opponent. San Diego against Washington State. You kind of have to weigh the two, right? Let's see. Jack noted that. Here's what Jeff said. I'm seeing a lot of fans disappointed. This is a great bowl, a legacy bowl. We've never been there. It's got a high payout. It's on Prime Network television. Fox, 8 o'clock kick. Hopefully we get Jason Benetti on the call for that one. Jeff adds, I get it's not splashy, but it's a great bowl. And even if Kyle McCord is out, newsflash, their QB1 is out too. Arvin agrees with Jeff, saying $6.3 million total payout, one of the highest. Also a nice place for Syracuse fans, Central New York fans, to visit after Christmas. Matt Ass disagrees, saying not a great opponent, not thinking some of the guys will play in this one, think they would have played in the Gator Bowl, which is the game that they deserved. Cuse fans would have showed up for that. I agree with Matt in that the Gator Bowl is definitely a more prestigious bowl game than the Holiday Bowl. No offense to our friends at the Holiday Bowl. It's a better brand name, better opponent, and you would have got more fans. So I wonder what the Holiday Bowl is going to be counting on people from Washington State coming down, because that's not a long trip. This factors into bowl considerations, right? Travel, tickets. I think they're counting on a lot of Syracuse fans that want to get out of the cold weather in late December, but that's an expensive flight for a lot of people, especially from the East Coast, from a lot of places in the country. So I'm curious in the negotiations there and how they kind of go down the tiers, why the Gator Bowl felt that Duke was a better sell and would sell more tickets and hotel rooms and all that comes with it than Syracuse fans. I mean, Syracuse fans, they'll travel to the right places. And I think there will be Syracuse fans in San Diego. There would be a hell of a lot more in Jacksonville. It's just, as the kids would say, facts, right? As Matt notes there. Dave W. says, all I want for Christmas is for Kyle McCord to play in the Holiday Bowl. So that is the next big thing, right? That's the next question. We know who Syracuse will play. We know where they will play. We know what bowl game it'll be. Now, the who, in terms of McCord, LeQuint, OG, Justin Barron, Marlowe Wax. Am I forgetting a player or two? I don't think Fidel Diggs is going to opt out. When we talked to some players towards the end of the season, he said he was good to go and should be playing in the bowl game. And who goes in the portal? Another big question for Syracuse football. Who do they pursue in the portal? What positions, notably quarterback, do they pursue in the portal? These are all things we're going to be talking about, guys, as football will continue to be right there on the front burner here with Syracuse basketball, obviously really struggling right now. They've got a week where they play Albany on Tuesday, Georgetown on Saturday. It's a 4-4 team that a lot of people have a lot of questions about, so we'll certainly continue to discuss that. But I know some people are bummed about the Holiday Bowl, but hey, we're talking Syracuse football more than ever in December. Interesting times, coming off a 9-3 season where they finished 21st in the college football playoff rankings. You got Dabo Swinney giving Syracuse shout-outs from the podium as they accept the ACC trophy, beating SMU in an incredible ACC championship game last night. So, look, I'll say this. I know the Holiday Bowl is a bummer for some people, but the vibes around Syracuse football right now have not been this high in a long time. So I guess you take the good with the bad in that case. But I get it if some people kind of groaned when the Holiday Bowl was the choice. But San Diego is calling, friends, and that's where the Orange will be. We're going to have plenty more to come, though, in the coming days when the portal opens and all things Syracuse football. Stay tuned, my friends, and become a Syracuse Sports Insider, because if I get any breaking news about who's going in the portal and what, our Syracuse Sports Insiders will get that information first. Insight, analysis, opinions on everything Syracuse sports-wise, including the upcoming Holiday Bowl, the transfer portal season, who Syracuse is pursuing in the portal, and all of that. There is no better time to be a Syracuse Sports Insider. Text me directly at 315-847-3895. Text the word orange to that number to sign up to become a Syracuse Sports Insider. It's just $3.99 a month. You can try it free you can basically try it free till Christmas. Try it free for a couple of weeks and then sign on board and put being a Syracuse Sports Insider in your stocking or the stocking of the Syracuse Orange fan in your life. Come on, I got to do the pitch for you. Speaking of the Holiday Bowl, what a great holiday gift. So come on board, friends. It's going to be busy times for Syracuse football in the coming days and weeks, and it's going to be interesting to see who's in and who's out in a lot of different ways. We'll end it there for tonight because I want to go watch the Bills and enjoy the rest of my Sunday, and I know you guys want to do the same. So we will meet again here. Make sure you subscribe on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, so whenever live editions of Syracuse Sports pop up or whenever you want to listen and watch Syracuse Sports, you can do it on your time. And subscribing and following is the best way to know when new episodes are up and running, right, guys? Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Syracuse is heading for San Diego. The Holiday Bowl, Washington State, December 27th, 8 o'clock kickoff. And that one, there's been another live edition of Syracuse Sports presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. We'll catch you next time, guys.